Sarah, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Well, you're mute. Are you muted?
Um, I don't think so. I am not muted.
Can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
She's just to do it.
It's not indicating that you're muted, but we're working on it from this end as well. The owl was just flashing his eyes.
She's writing a note.
What is
Not
it?
muted.
I'm not muted.
I mean, you just simply appointed the just member of the commission. Tell the legislature later.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, just a little bit.
Okay.
Right.
Would you like me to sing a song?
Can we pick the song?
Yes, you can.
She must be feeling better.
Yes. All right, we hear you. We can get started. Welcome to the May 29, 2024 meeting of the Maine Commission on Governmental Ethics and Election Practices. Our first item is ratification of the minutes of the March 27th, April 18th, and May 8th, 2024 meetings. So moved. Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we ratify the minutes for March 27th, April 18th, and May 8th. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Commissioner Marvel?
Yes.
Commissioner Hastings?
Yes.
Commissioner Leclerc?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Item 2 is a late registration and reporting issue in the referendum in Boothbay Harbor. Is there anybody going to join us?
Yeah, I've just invited him to join.
Okay. Is that Mr. McGrath I see there?
Sorry, I was on Zoom. Mute. I apologize. Yes.
No worries at all. We'll get all the kinks ironed out here. Welcome. So what our normal process is I will ask Mr. Wayne to kind of give us some background on the case. We'll give you a chance to describe from your perspective what things look like, and then we'll discuss it.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Wayne.
Great, thanks. I'll be brief. I want to credit Commission's Assistant Director, Martha Courier, with doing the investigation and writing the memo. So if you have more in-depth questions, she's the one to ask.
Thank you, Martha.
You're welcome.
So on April 11th, we received a complaint about a group of people that were spending money in support of a school referendum in the Boothbay region. And the date of the election was April 24th. And the gist of the complaint was there's all this spending by this group. Why haven't they registered with the commission as a ballot question? So at your last, well, at a recent meeting, the commission directed staff to investigate that group spending, which was named Citizens for a Bright Future for the Boothbay Region. And you also authorized us in our discretion whether to investigate the groups that were spending money to oppose the referendum. So we asked all three groups to state their spending and also to back it up with documents like billing statements and invoices. And they all provided that to us. And Citizens for a Bright Future for Boothbay Region ended up filing registration with us because they had spent more than $5,000 and they filed a campaign finance report. So Ms. Courier sent them a penalty notice letting them know that preliminary penalty, in our opinion, for filing this report late was $3,862. And that we would also be scheduling for your consideration, a couple other penalties that are in your discretion relating to the registration being filed late, and also that the signs did not include the proper disclaimer on them. So, Mr. McGrath, who I want to underscore, was brought on by this group after the expenditures had already taken place. He's helping present the matter from the group's point of view, but he was not consulted on the actual campaign expenditures. He's here today, and he wrote a letter that was included in your packet, arguing for leniency and because the group did not know that there was a recent law change. And up and through 2023, this kind of reporting and registration was only required in the towns and the cities that have a population of more than 15,000. And there actually was no registration reporting required for the smaller towns and cities. And that changed just last year. And in the opinion of the commission staff, it's understandable that this particular group of people would not know of that law change. So our recommendation is to assess no penalty for the late registration, a penalty of $250 for the late campaign finance report, and a $50 penalty for the lack of disclaimer on the signs, which would be a total of $300 if you accepted that. That's lower than some of the previous penalties we've assessed in the past that related to the statewide ballot questions that come up. And again, our primary rationale for that is that this is a group of people that promoted a referendum, I think about 5 years ago in Boothbay Region in 2019. At that time, they didn't have to register ballot reports with us. And so if you're not consulting a lawyer or a consultant, it's reasonable to infer that no reporting would have been necessary this year as well. So all of those penalties are in your discretion. It's a significant reduction from the preliminary penalty for the late report. We also looked at the spending of the groups opposing the referendum, and the two groups spent $2,997 and $1,991 respectively. So in staff's opinion, they were not required to register and follow the instructions.
Ms. Courier, do you have anything to like to add?
No, I think that's a great summary.
Are there questions from the commissioners for Mr. Wayne or Ms. Courier?
No.
Okay, terrific.
Mr. McGrath.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So to shed some light on, and Mr. Wayne alluded to this. So 5 years ago, I worked with these folks on a local ordinance. And so at that point, they said, what do we have to do for finance? I said, actually nothing, because we have fewer than 15,000 residents, I think it is, or whatever the number was. It only amounted to about 5-6 municipalities in the state. So I ended up getting a call after the ethics commission. They had this referendum going on, and they did some digital ads. They did some stuff in the newspaper. The opposition on the other side of them to this bond referendum, they were in support of a bond to renovate the new schools that have, mold and things of that nature. Anyways, the ethics commission gets them a letter, and they called me because I worked with them 5 years previously, and they said, well, you told us this that we never report. I said, well, they've changed the law since then. So I came in after the fact at this point. I think that, there was no intent to hide anything here. One of the big donors, Mr. Kaloum, on this, he was in the press. He held a fundraiser where he did matching funds for the school bond, in the sense of to do all the upfront architecture and things of that nature, so the taxpayers didn't have to do it. So he wasn't trying to hide his support or anything like that around this. I really think it's just because these folks, the law changed. They're doing their own. They didn't have any consultants or attorneys to tell them otherwise. They've done a referendum 5 years ago, so they're basing it off of that. And as soon as we were notified, I know they were all, get the invoices, give it to ethics, like they were how do I put it? They were just, didn't know that it existed. And when they learned, they acted quickly. And that's why they called me on a Saturday. And I spent time with them, walking them through it. So basically, all we have to say is we didn't know the law existed, and that it wasn't trying to hide the football, as the expression goes, that they were vocal about their support anyways, and they would have reported happily anyways.
Well, thank you very much. That's, I appreciate your participation and, it's very understandable. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. McGrath?
No.
No. Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay. I will, for the purposes of discussion, I will move that we find the Citizens for a Bright Future, did register late, did file their initial campaign finance report late, and, did have a lack of a disclaimer on their lost lawn signs. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Okay, we'll move to a vote. Commissioner Marvel?
Yes.
Commissioner Hastings?
Yes.
Commissioner Leclerc? You're muted now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. I'll vote yes as well. I'll further move that we assess a total of $300 of fines, a penalty of $250 for the late initial campaign finance report, and a $50 penalty for the lack of disclaimers on the lawn signs.
Second.
Is there discussion? And my reason for this, and it is a little bit lower than we might ordinarily do, but I really do understand the position of the folks who are involved in this, and Mr. McGrath. You know, the law changes and it's sometimes tough to keep up with that, especially when you participated in similar activities within the last couple of years. So this is a lower fine than we might ordinarily assess. So we can move to a vote. Commissioner Marvel?
Yes.
Commissioner Hastings?
Yes.
Commissioner Leclerc?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. So thank you again, Mr. McGrath. Thank you, Ms. Courier. Thank you, Mr. Wayne.
Thank you very much.
To investigate or have to make any finding on that?
I don't think so because there was no violation.
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Moving on to agenda item 3. This is a request for a waiver of a late filing penalty from the Planned Parenthood Main Action Plan. Is someone joining us? Terrific. Ms. Margulis?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Perfect.
Great.
Did I pronounce your name properly?
It's Margulies, but it's totally fine.
I apologize.
No worries. Yeah.
I'll try not to do it again.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, our normal procedure on cases like this is that I'll ask Mr. Wayne to kind of give us a procedural and factual background. We'll give you a chance to address us about anything you'd like. We'll discuss it and then we'll make a finding. Mr. Wayne?
Sure. The Planned Parenthood Main Action Fund PAC had arranged for some printed material in support of a candidate in a contested primary election. So the PAC was required to file an independent expenditure report on April 27th. And it tried to file a report, we believe on time, but it ended up being filed on May 11th, which was 14 days late. And the preliminary penalty for the late filing is calculated to be $733.16. And the PAC is here to request a waiver of the penalty. I'm sure Ms. Margulies would like to express the facts of the filing. What stood out to me after reading Martha Courier's memo was that Ms. Margulies had taken over this responsibility because someone was unexpectedly, another staff person was unexpectedly unavailable. So she didn't have a lot of experience filing this kind of report, I believe. And there were a couple of errors made in filing the report in terms of entering the wrong kind of transaction, but also our reporting system is sort of a two-step process. First, you enter the data and then you file the report. And my takeaway here is that she did the first part, but the PAC didn't actually end up completing the process so that it was available. We credit the PAC with good intentions, but the commission does have a history of assessing some penalties in these kinds of situations, because we want to impress on the PACs and the candidates that they really have to finish the process so that information is available to the public on time, and also, I think it's a reasonable expectation that people see a confirmation that it's been filed, which is available to the PAC in a few different ways. So our overall recommendation was to reduce the penalty to $400. And again, this is lower than our baseline that has developed over the past 4 years, because we recognize that the individual filing the report was inexperienced, and it was still filed well and before the election. So we think there was less public comment.
Ms. Courier, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay. Ms. Margulies?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for that report. This was definitely a situation where someone was out unexpectedly. I had trouble with the online filing system, but the best of intentions. And when I, became aware of the error, immediately contacted ethics to fix it. So I appreciate your understanding, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have questions? Really? No. Commissioner Leclerc?
Yeah, I'm reading in the commission's, the staff's recommendation, that, a request that, Planned Parenthood train additional staff to assist with filings in the future. And I'm just going to ask, have you engaged in that process?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. So the staff member who is responsible for this should be back from leave shortly. In the meantime, I've become very adept, I think. So I am a backup. And then our CEO has done this for many years. So we have at least 3 folks now. Prior to that, we didn't. So I don't take that suggestion lightly, and we're definitely working to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Leclerc, for bringing it up. It's important to have some backup, just to make sure that the reports are filed correctly. Okay, any other questions from commissioners or comments? I'll move that we reduce the penalty to $400.
Second.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Commissioner Marble?
Yes.
Commissioner Hastings?
Yes.
Commissioner Leclerc?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. And thank you for coming, Ms. Margulies. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
Moving on to agenda item 4. This is a late PAC registration by the Bangor Firefighters PAC Fund. And is somebody joining us? Is that Mr. Lapari there?
Yes.
Terrific.
Yes, hi.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Super. So we're here to consider your request for a waiver. What our normal procedure is to have Mr. Wayne and Ms. Courier tell us about the factual and procedural background of the case. And then we'll give you a chance to address us, and then we'll make a decision.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Wayne.
Sure. Political action committees that are registered with the commission are required to file an updated electronic registration by March 1st of each election year. And one purpose of this requirement is to make sure that the PAC's treasurer and officer information are up to date, and that the statement of purpose that's available to the public does not become outdated. And it's to encourage PACs to be forthright and straightforward about who's leading them, and to have the PAC be accountable. So our former employee, Emma Burke, was administering this updated registration process. She sent 3 emails to all of the PACs in February, and then 1 final email on the March 1st deadline, asking them to log into our e-filing site, review their committee details, and then to make any necessary changes and to amend or refile the registration. By March 8th, by March 8th, the PAC had not done this, so she sent them a penalty notice saying, we haven't received any registration from you. I believe that got the PAC's attention and they filed an updated registration on March 11th. Emma then sent a penalty notice to the PAC that in its discretion, the commission could assess a penalty of up to $2,500 for not doing the updated registration on time. And Mr. Lapari is here today and he submitted a letter explaining why they're asking for no penalty. We think, you know, this was sort of a discretionary call for staff, whether to make this recommendation or not. And this is sort of a discretionary call for you. If you believe a penalty is appropriate under the circumstances, we would recommend $250, reflecting the fact that this is a required update, but there was no new information. But also there can be a need for this in the future, although we've never done it in the past. In the past, if the PAC filed the updated registration even late, we don't have great records available, but we think we did not assess penalties for this in the past. One other update is that the PAC either has dissolved or is about to dissolve. After being dormant for a number of years, they have given away their current funds to other, I think other PACs, but I'm not quite sure. So they currently have no funds. Although from the staff's point of view, if a penalty were assessed, I suppose the labor union that is responsible for that, but other sources could pay it, even if the PAC doesn't exist anymore.
Thank you. Ms. Courier, are you?
Yes, the PAC did file their final report last week. And they've since terminated, so they have a zero account balance because they have not had any sort of political activity for many years. They have been filing zero activity reports
For at least a decade, right?
for quite a while. And so they gave their remaining funds to the Professional Firefighters of Maine PAC, which is a statewide organization. But the law doesn't, it's pretty vague on who you can, give that money to. And as Mr. Wayne indicated, any other party could pay for the PAC's penalty should one be assessed.
Okay.
Or an individual could pay for it. The law doesn't say it has to be come out of the PAC's treasurer.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Mr. Lapari,
Yes.
feel free to address us.
Okay. Thank you. Reading through the documentation in the letter, the one thing about the notice I can address is we did receive the notices. The one notice I cannot find in our records is the first notice. And I know that Emma attached that to our other email. So the first notice that the commissioner was referring to was the February 6th email. All other emails that were sent out were a 10-day notice, a 2-day notice, and the absolute final day notice. Now we're a union. This PAC is fairly dormant. Actually, it's very dormant. I think our last donation was 5 years ago. Prior to that, it had been a few years before that. And it was created in 2005, back when we had Tabor. It had $3,000 in it. It had since dropped down to $2,000, mostly through a couple of donations and bank fees just from existing. So we had never missed a quarterly report. We never, this whole entire time, almost 20 years. So I would say that it wasn't the email from Emma that, got my attention on that we were going to get penalized. It was the fact that through procedure, just a procedural thing internally, I am the treasurer of the union and it is a part-time position. And what I do is I come in once a month, I sit down, I do all the bills, which we mostly get through through mail, old fashioned. I do the books, I go through our email, and the 11th, when I responded to her, is 2 days prior to our monthly meeting. And I saw her "you're in trouble" email, and I immediately called her and said, what is this? I didn't see your the original email in my system. So yeah, I mean, that put us way behind. It put us over the deadline, obviously. So, and as I've explained before, I mean, late is late, unfortunately. Also, we were talking about or it was brought up about updating our information. I think the other issue why we were tardy with this is because the officers have naturally been updated through the, biannually, because we change so often. This is probably the first time in a couple, for quite a while, that we've had the same officers more than 2 years. So naturally, we've been going in and updating and re-registering this pack because we had to, because the names changed. So we would just naturally do it. We didn't know we were complying with the law. We were just doing it to be proficient. So the fact that we didn't have to is because our officers haven't changed. And so that was a mistake on our part. And, so that's, why we're asking for the waiver. There's no harm, in our point of view, there was no harm to the public to penalize us. And since then, we basically said that the only thing that can happen is us make mistakes, us miss this. I sat through a class a year ago and completely, it was an all-day class about how the pack was going to change. The laws were all changing, and I had absolutely no idea what was being taught to me. So I'm just way over my head. Just get rid of it. We donated the money to another pack. I asked permission if that was okay first, because I didn't want to screw that up. Just get rid of it. And they said, yep, you can do this. You can give it to these people. So we got rid of it. I wanted to close it out. We don't want to make it. This is just over our head. So it's not worth keeping. So we've done that. We got rid of it. We didn't even want it. And I will say, the only other state agency we deal with is our corporate licensing. We deal with the Secretary of State with that, and they send out notices starting 3 months ahead of time. And they also are a state agency that can assess penalties if you miss. So I'll start getting emails from them 3 months prior to their deadline. So I got plenty of time to pick that up because we weren't a full-time pack. So I just asked that. I know, $250 isn't as much as, $2,500, but I asked for a waiver. And I'll answer any other questions about that.
Terrific. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Does any commissioners have questions? Either for Mr. Wayne or Ms. Courier or Mr. Lopari?
I have a question for Mr. Wayne. We're always juggling a limited individual circumstance with precedent setting or norms or history, those kinds of things. What, in your opinion, would be the effect of waiving any penalty for a late filing in terms of any precedent setting or concern for another situation?
Having heard Mr. Lopari's, staff is fine if you assess no penalty in this matter. It was 11 days late, no information changed. In terms of setting precedent, we could wait until there's a more egregious violation, a more serious violation, and then begin the process of assessing penalties for this. So that's our reaction.
Thank you.
Commissioner,
So, Mr. Wayne, are you saying that we haven't assessed penalties for this type of violation?
For the updated registration, we've never done it. I'm not sure exactly why those decisions were made, because it's been the discretion of previous employees. And also, 2020 COVID would have been a factor.
Commissioner,
If that's the case, I don't see this fact situation warranting instituting a penalty in light of the fact that essentially a dormant organization, which has not been making any contributions. So I understand what happened. There was an oversight and they're disbanding. So I'm happy with not instituting a penalty in this case.
Okay, so Commissioner Leclerc, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm like-minded.
Me too. So I'll move that we find that the updated registration was filed late and that we assess a 0 penalty.
Second.
Is there discussion? Commissioner Marvel?
Yes.
Commissioner Hastings?
Yes.
Commissioner Leclerc?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. And thank you, Mr. Lepari, for coming and speaking with us.
Thank you.
Next item is agenda item 5, which deals with an unregistered legislative candidate, on the Honorable Joseph Galetta, who I understand has since this report was put together, has filed his registration. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is he joining us? No. Okay. Mr. Wayne, would you like to give us some background?
Sure. All candidates for the legislature and for county office have to register with our commission after they qualify for the ballot, or sometimes even before, if they're engaging in financial activity. And there are deadlines for that. So on March 13th, he qualified as a candidate for re-election to the State House of Representatives. We began our usual procedures of sending letters by U.S. mail to the candidate. Our candidate registrar, Lori Brand, sent 3 letters to Mr. Representative Galetta, asking him to register on March 19th, April 1st, and April 10th. There was an exchange of voicemails between the candidate and Lori Brand that happened in April, but we still didn't receive the registration. We also made multiple phone calls to him that are outlined on page 2 of the memo. There are 4 particular attempts to reach him. I myself called his workplace and talked to the receptionist. She said, I'll go talk to him. She said, he asked me to take your name and number, and we still didn't hear back. So he's aware of the requirement. It took some time for him to do it in spite of our outreach. So at the time we put the packet together, we were recommending the assessment of $100. But later that day, he did register with us after we had completed all the materials. And at that time, we were not ready to withdraw this matter. We thought potentially you might want to consider a $100 penalty because it's not the matter of the staff effort. It's more of the sort of knowing and voluntary, just, not failing to register after the state has made so many attempts. That's why I repeat that. But having said that, our past practice in the past with this particular requirement is to use the penalty as a means of getting their attention. And then if they do register in previous years, that the penalty has been withdrawn by the staff. So it's now in your discretion whether you want to assess the penalty. Staff is flexible for that issue.
Ms. Courier, anything to add?
No, Representative Galetta, I reached out to the folks running the caucus campaign, the day that we were doing the packet, just I thought, I'll give it one more shot to see if we can get him to register. And that led to a conversation that the caucus campaign director had with Representative Buckingham, who's in charge of that caucus, and Representative Buckingham was able to make contact with Representative Galetta and explain to him the necessity to file, and that's what triggered a conversation with me, with myself and Representative Galetta, and we walked him through how to register electronically on our website. So had he just reviewed the previous correspondence from our office, it could have been resolved sooner. And there are, always reports that, need to be filed in terms of campaign finance reports, especially in this case, because Representative Galetta is a traditional finance candidate. So there's things are important for the public to know as well. So, staff do try very hard to get these registrations in, so we can get everybody's ducks in a row, and we're all starting in the same, starting.
Do we have any information or evidence that he either expended or received money for his campaign before he registered?
He did have, as a current legislator, he had a campaign in 2022. So there is carryover money from that 2022 campaign into 2024.
Sure.
He's a self-funded candidate, but to the best of our knowledge, there's been no other financial activity this election cycle.
Before he registered.
That is correct.
Any other questions from commissioners or Ms. Currier or Mr. Wayne?
Got a comment or two, it's not really a question.
Your comments are welcome.
No, we'll try to keep them that way. It strikes me that he's not a new candidate. He's been through this process before, and I assume without any counterindication that 2 years ago, appropriately registered and all those things. It concerns me that a significant number of attempts and staff time were ignored, apparently. And I don't think that should go unaddressed. So I think there should be some consequence to this. Leave it at that for now.
Commissioner Hastings.
In light of the fact that he's a sitting legislator and has been through this before, and I assume is registered before. I know we don't have all the facts, but it almost appears to be a willful refusal to register as required by law, not an oversight or not a mistake or lack of knowledge. I mean, he's not here telling us otherwise, and just looking at the facts, I see 3 letters and 4 phone calls. It just
Feels that way.
it certainly leads me to at least have a suspicion that this was done willfully.
Would you like to make a motion?
So I would move that we assess the penalty of $100.
Second,
Is there any discussion of that? It's been moved and seconded that we find that he did file late and that we assess a penalty of $100. We'll take a vote. Commissioner Marvel?
yes.
Commissioner Hastings?
Yes.
Commissioner Leclerc?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. And thank you for all your efforts from the staff to make this right. It's, you guys went far beyond what was required to get in touch with them and try to let them know what you needed to do. Moving on to agenda item 6, this is the rulemaking that we've discussed several times on the new law limiting election spending by foreign governments. Mr. Wayne, would you like to?
Sure, this relates to a citizen initiated law that was approved on November 7th, 2023. And the purpose is to prevent foreign governments from influencing main elections, both candidate elections and ballot questions. In January, the commission decided to initiate a rulemaking to invite comments on some proposed rule amendments. We accepted comments through March 11th. And during that comment period, the law, well, prior to the comment period, probably the law was challenged in federal court by plaintiffs who were in opposition to section 1064. On February 29th, the U.S. District Court for the District of Maine enjoined the commission from enforcing section 1064 until there's a final judgment in that constitutional challenge. So in March, the commission considered the comments that we received from 8 different sources, took into consideration, and you took into consideration the preliminary injunction order. And the decision by the commission was to pursue some revised amendments that the staff had proposed to you in consultation with the Office of the Attorney General. And among the revisions that we were proposing at that March meeting were 2 new subsections, which were section 15, subsection 9, and subsection 10, which was intended to address the issues of enforceability. So you directed us to invite a second round of comments. which we did. We received, during the second round of comments, we received comments only from Versant Power. And they raised a number of points, but their primary point was that they believed these two new subsections 15.9 and 15.10 would create uncertainty about which sections of the law were going to be enforced. Staff consulted with our council, and we recommend adopting the amendments that we proposed to in March without making any changes. Our view is that if you look at the structure of the rule, the different subsections of the rule relate to different subsections of the statute. And if it were the case that portions of 1064 were found to be unenforceable, it would be pretty clear which sections of the rule would not be enforced either. And of course, in that event, the commission would issue some further guidance to make sure it was very clear to our constituents. So, as I said, our recommendation is to adopt the rules that were proposed to you in March, the revised amendments. And I'll just pause there. Our council should jump in if there's anything I neglected.
Mr. Bolt, anything?
The only observation I'd make is the advantage of doing the process the way we're doing it, which I understand person and I think common objective to, is that the idea is to have an enforceable rule in place if and when the injunction is lifted, so that there's guidance for the regulated community as to how to comply with the law, if in fact they're going to be required to comply with it.
And in fact, they'd have advance notice because we would have adopted these conditional on the district court's approval of the law. So they'd have advance notice. They'd be able to do some planning, which would be advantageous to them.
Absolutely.
Ms. Courier, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Are there questions from commissioners for Mr. Wayne, Ms. Courier, or Mr. Bolton? No. Okay, I'll move that we adopt the rules with the amendments to become effective if and only if the district court permits the law to be enforced. Is that a reasonable construction?
That's just fine.
Well, then I'll second it. All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the rules with the amendments to be effective if and only if the district court allows the statute to be enforced. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. Commissioner Marvel?
Yes.
Commissioner Hastings?
Yes.
Commissioner Leclerc?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Terrific. Thank you all very much. Is there any other business that we need to take care of?
No.
Then I think there's a motion that might be in order. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It can't be discussed, so we'll move directly to a vote. Commissioner
Yes.
Marvel?
Yes.
Commissioner Hastings?
Yes.
Commissioner Leclerc?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Thank you all for attending and for doing such a terrific job.
It's maybe a record.
Not bad.